I'm delighted to be joined here by Chris Maddocks, who was diagnosed with young onset dementia at the age of 60. Thank you, Chris, for being here to share your experience with us. During this webinar, Dr. Giebel will be discussing her latest research in misdiagnosis. You had your own experience of this when you first noticed symptoms. Are you able to tell us a little bit about that experience and what the impact had on you?
Yeah, sure. I was diagnosed at the age of 60 with early onset vascular dementia.
Mm.
I was still working full time, and this was following the 3 minor strokes that I'd had, which had also left me some cognitive problems. So my GP just kept saying, "Oh, it's because you've had a stroke." My GP one day told me she was there for my physical health and not my mental health. And there was another glitch because I moved from Wales to England and I had my diagnosis in Wales. So when I moved to England, for 4 years, I was asking the GP if I could see a neurologist in England because my symptoms were changing. And there were things like I lost my sense of taste and smell, and that was before the pandemic. I had terrible restless legs. I was sleeping really poorly. So I knew there were changes, but I was putting it all down to my Parkinson's disease, which I was diagnosed with that 2 years after my vascular dementia. Um, so, yeah, it's not an easy process. But after 4 years of asking my GP if I could see a neurologist, I was referred to see a neurologist in England. And I had another scan, a CT scan. I was examined and I spoke to the consultant. And at the end of it, she said, "I think that you may have Lewy body dementia." So I said, "What do you mean you think I may have it? Do I or don't I have it?" To which she replied, "It can only be confirmed on autopsy." And I said, "Well, I'm not ready for that yet." And I've since found out that it can be confirmed with a DET scan or a PET scan. And when I asked for one, they said it would cost too much money, so I didn't have one.
Yeah, that's really hard to not have the knowledge of what it was. And what impact did it have on you to have a sudden change of diagnosis?
Well, it was huge because I went there expecting just to be told there were changes in my brain scans and what the changes were. So I really wasn't expecting a totally different diagnosis. And I knew nothing about Lewy body dementia. I knew lots about vascular dementia. I was fortunate enough that there is the Lewy Body Society, so I went there for some help. And they now have two admiral nurses working for them, specializing in Lewy body dementia. But I had to find these things out for myself. I wasn't given any information about Lewy body dementia. I wasn't, referred to any onward services, and I wasn't given another appointment with a neurologist. I was diagnosed and discharged.
It's not good enough, is it?
No,
To not have that support.
you're supposed to have annual checks about your dementia. It's 7 years now, and I haven't had one annual check. So you literally are left to fight your own corner if you can do so.
Yeah, that's really tough. And if you had the diagnosis of Lewy body dementia earlier on in the process, do you think it would have made a difference to you and your family to have that diagnosis?
I think it would have made a difference to me in as much as the understanding of Lewy body dementia and the effects of Lewy body dementia. Because, I understood then vascular dementia, there's lots of they say Lewy body dementia is the second most popular kind of dementia, but it's the least diagnosed because it's harder to diagnose Lewy body dementia. And one of the main symptoms is hallucinations. Unfortunately, I don't get them, but it's nice to know what's ahead of you.
Yeah.
And I'm one of these. I try to work if there's a glitch or a problem, I'll try and work a way around it. Yeah. So it's trying to make things better for yourself, but you can't make things better for yourself unless you know what you're facing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's important to understand that correct diagnosis to know
Yeah.
what's possibly in the future.
Yeah.
So what improvements would you like to see in terms of the experience of diagnosis for people and people with young onset dementia?
Where do I start and where do I stop? First of all, there's got to be faster, quicker routes to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
I think the average at the moment is about 4 years to get a diagnosis. So what happens in those 4 years before you receive a diagnosis?
Yeah.
I lost my job as a result of my diagnosis, and I got no support in anything.
Yeah.
I tried to claim benefits and I couldn't get benefits. So I had to take them to a tribunal. How many people are able to do that?
No. Yeah.
And I think that once you receive a diagnosis of dementia, and if you are a younger person and you lose your job, whatever, there's entitlements that you're entitled to. You know, there's the personal independence payment and employment support allowance. But I literally had to fight to get what I was entitled to. And it shouldn't be like that.
No.
So I had the shock of having a diagnosis, but I also had the emotional and financial impact of losing my job as well.
Yeah.
So I would certainly like a faster route to getting a diagnosis. And when I've had the two different diagnoses, it was so matter of fact the way that the diagnosis was delivered. It was a case of, you've got dementia, go and get your affairs in order. And I would much rather than give you some hope when you receive a diagnosis and saying things like, well, there are some things you may not be able to still do.
Yeah.
However, there are lots of things that you can still do. Because I think people get this diagnosis of a life-limiting, life-changing condition, and to not get any hope or encouragement. And I can remember sitting and thinking to myself, you've got a choice. You can either sit and vegetate, or you can do something with what's left of the rest of your life.
Yeah. And so you've chosen to, try and raise awareness with young onset dementia.
Yeah,
speak out to
absolutely.
people and the experience you're having to try and make a change, which is amazing.
I just want to raise awareness, and if I can make things better for other people getting a diagnosis, to not have to go through some of the awful things and the pitfalls that I went through, it's all worthwhile for me.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, for everything you do and for being here to share your experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you.